So are you going to present your screen, Chris?
Yeah, I think George is going to take a couple moments here first, and then we'll go into the VS Code talks.
Okay.
I think.
So how are we going? Does that mean we've got recording going and we verified that we've got audio?
Put it this way, we had audio, and now I'm recording it. I can't hear it because it's going through a thing called black hole or like that. So it's
okay, but we know we got it. Yeah. So I think in that
yeah,
case,
it was recording before, so hopefully it's working.
Okay, awesome. Well, in that case, are you guys feeling like we're about ready? Yeah.
Yeah, we're good now.
Okay, cool. In that case, for everyone who's on the call, there's a bunch of us now. Thank you everyone for joining. This is the first of our meetups for online developers to get together in Roku and share some of the good things that we're working on, techniques and things like that. So I know there's been a lot of interest in getting together and sharing this stuff for some time, so I'm glad we've been able to kick it off. We're really lucky today that we're going to have both Chris and Bronley giving us an overview of the great work they're doing in the VS Code IDE. And those of us that use it know how great it is, and it's greater still than most of us realize. So I hope they're going to give experienced users something to check out. And those of you who don't know what it is are in for a real treat, because it's going to be some mind-blowing stuff. Anyone on the call who doesn't know what it is. I think what we'll do is we'll just jump in with you guys having a presentation on that, and afterwards we can break out and spend some time chatting about some other things or whatever comes up. But we'll just take it organically, I think, and just let you guys, if you're feeling good to go, just take it away.
Yeah, sounds good. So I'm going to start. My name's Chris. I've been working a lot on the extension with Bronley for the better part of a year now, probably. Our goal right now is going to be just basically to go through some of the most common day-to-day things that you're going to encounter with the extension, things you might not know it does. My focus on my part of the presentation is going to be actually debugging with the device. And then Bronley will be taking over and going over ways that it can improve your life in the actual editor, or some things with configurations for complex projects. So I'm just going to share my screen here. So first thing, so let me know if most people can see this, or if I need to make it a little bigger. I know that Hangouts will like to compress it a little bit. Does everybody think they can see that fine?
One more might be good.
Yeah, one more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sweet.
So what I've got here is a pretty bog standard little sample project. All this does is it basically hits the Roku subreddit and displays all the posts on that subreddit as a little markup list. So first thing here is I don't really have anything configured right now other than a BS config in my project. This just tells the extension what files you want to include when you go to sideload it on the device. Right now, we're following a very bog standard Roku setup, just a manifest, source, components, and images. You can further configure this with a launch config, which Bronley will go into, but for now, we're just going to run with this. With this setup, launching it in VS Code is as simple as going to the debug window. Actually, sorry, that's doing a launch config. For me, it's just F5. It'll ask you what type of debug you want. We're doing Roku. We do have device detection in the extension automatic. So as long as you're on the same network as your Roku, it will find it. You might have to give it a few seconds if you just open the editor. You pick that, enter your device password, and away you go. It'll sideload to the device, automatically start watching the logs. And that's pretty straightforward as far as getting it running. Now, when it comes to actually debugging something, we can step through our code in a much more user-friendly way than what you used to with Telnet, where you'd have to run the continue command, things like that. Again, we'll just sideload my device information. So what I've got right now is in my editor, like most other languages, I've just got a breakpoint set. So once the device is connected, found the breakpoint, it'll figure out where you are, drop you right there. You can see your call stack, jump to that spot if you had more functions. You can quite simply jump over, jump into, and just step through the project as normal. Again, you can see where you came through as far as call stack is concerned. Very useful. While you're in here, you can also do inspection. So right now, I want to know what progress is. I can simply hover over it and start inspecting all of its variables. We do also right now, as a little added helper, we get all the children if it's a node. I don't think this one actually has any. Oh yeah, it does. So you can start inspecting the children and everything like that as well. So you can also, if you want to take a look at this stuff, add them to your watch as well. I haven't seen a lot of people use this, but it's actually very, very beneficial. So you can not only inspect variables, but you can also inspect conditionals. So I want to know when this thing is equal to invalid. It's not anymore because I just created one here, for example. You can also inspect at a greater level everything at local. So I can see we do have some VS Code things in here that will go away probably the next couple updates. They only really happen when you use hit-based breakpoints or conditional breakpoints, things like that. Everyday normal stuff, you won't see this. But again, you can simply go through, start inspecting basically anything you want. Pretty straightforward.
I forgot that was there. I should probably add that to the list of things to hide anyway, because we're adding that. So
yeah. So that's your normal breakpointing, right? Now, what you can also do is conditional breakpoints. So to add a conditional breakpoint, it's just as simple as right-clicking on the side, add conditional. And I have one set up here right now. So this conditional breakpoint is I want to actually stop only when this condition is true, which is very useful if you know you're getting into a really bad state, but you don't want to have to step through the function 15 times or something like that, right? There we go. And now I can start taking a look at my content, figure out exactly what's wrong with it, why was it invalid or equal to empty, etc. That's the second most useful one in my opinion. And then there's two other ones that I'm gonna turn on together. So we have this one here, which is known as a hit count. So I'll only break on this line once I've hit this line of code twice, and on the third time we'll actually break in, which is really great if you know you're in a for loop and you know after so many iterations something goes haywire, right? And again, you don't want to step through it every single time. There's also this one we actually just fixed. It's apparently been broken for months. Is log
nobody
noticed.
noticed.
This one I think is a little underrated. We support the bracket syntax in here. So what this is actually going to do is inject a print statement, and it will inject this post variable. So you don't have to add prints to your code and accidentally commit them later and things like that. So again, if I run this, make my log a little bigger. Where's my remote? Here we go. So I have this just on item select. And if people are wondering what the app looks like, this is what the Roku app looks like. Just a little list of all the Reddit posts. When you click on them, you get a little dialogue, pretty simple. And you can see that thanks to that log point, I can get all the information about that item that was clicked without ever adding a print statement to my code. And also, if I make this a little smaller again, we've got my hit count. So if I start reloading the data, so 1, and on reload number 2, there's my breakpoint. So now I've run this function 3 times, third time I'm in and I can start inspecting it, figure out what's going on. So that's kind of breakpoints and the main inspects in a nutshell. There is one more thing that I'd like to focus on as well. Something that a lot of people have trouble with in their day-to-day. This is rendezvous. So this is something we have built into the extension. It's already always watching for rendezvous logs. So all that you have to do as a developer is connect to your device with Telnet, which most of us are used to doing. And then, I can never remember the command. All you have to do is
spell it right. I always get it wrong.
Copy paste. All you have to do is turn rendezvous logging on for the device. This will persist for as long as the device is online. So if you restart it, it will reset the setting, but you don't have to set this every time you launch the channel. I currently have.
Oh no, come back, Chris.
Reddit later, and I have two versions.
You froze for about 30 seconds there.
Okay, how about the start of the task?
You was meta rendezvousing, Chris.
Right.
You was demonstrating rendezvous in real life.
Right. right. So what I have here is I just have a little task. It's very simple. It just hits the subreddit, gets the responses, JSON, loops over it, creates some content nodes. That ends up back on your scene and powers your markup list. Now, I have two variants of it. There's a good and a bad. One of these is not keeping rendezvous in mind, and one of them is thinking about rendezvous first. There's only 2 lines of codes of difference, and I just want to show the power of looking at how much rendezvousing your app is doing. So right now we're running the bad version. To see the rendezvous information, it's actually at the bottom of the debug panel. You can just open it up. And like I said, it's already automatically watching for this information. You just got to turn log rendezvous on. You can see that this particular task had 162 rendezvous. That's essentially the task thread pausing for a moment, rendezvousing with the render thread to get the data in a thread safe way, and then coming back to the task to continue. It cost us almost 2.5 seconds of actual execution time in this application, right? So that's 2.5 seconds that you have lost in terms of how fast your task could have completed. Overall, it took a full 3 seconds for it to complete. Now, if I fix my issues with it, and to point them out, the issue is simply that I'm creating a content node on m.top and then passing that same content node into my other functions that I'm iterating over. Every time I access that, it's causing a rendezvous. But if I fix that and I create a local version, pass it through, then put it on top, we eliminate pretty much all of the rendezvous in this task and dramatically speed it up. So you can see we went down to 0.08 of a second for this task, and we only have 2 rendezvous now. So using this tool, you can save many seconds, and in some really horrible cases, I've seen people gain minutes of execution time back on their application just when trying to communicate between the task and the render thread. That's most of the items that I wanted to touch on. I think I got through them pretty quick, so I can probably take a couple moments if anybody has any questions about what I just went over.
Chris, before you take questions, can you explain how the breakpoints are actually working behind the scenes?
Yes. So right now, breakpoints are actually just straight up being injected. So we move your application into a staging environment and actually rewrite your code in these particular locations. So we're actually injecting a stop statement for you. If it's a hit count, we have this crazy 1-line if statement to track how many times you've hit that line. And then we do map it back. So when you hit a breakpoint, we know that we've injected that extra line of code, or 2 or 3, depending on how many breakpoints you have, and we automatically compensate for them. In the future, we currently have support for the debug protocol Roku's working on. We haven't added breakpoint support yet, but in the future, we won't even need to rewrite your code, hopefully. But that's breakpoints in a nutshell, how they're working behind the scene.
I've got a couple of questions, which is with the rendezvous stuff. If I was a complete noob, would it tell me that I don't have the setting on the device and let me know what I need to do to get it going?
Right now, it doesn't. I think I have that information in the README of our extension. If I don't, I can definitely add it. I can also add the link on the Roku documentation, but it is pretty straightforward. So if I bring this up again, it might be a little small. So can I make this bigger? I can. It's as simple as connecting to Telnet on your device, but this time on 8080 instead of 8085, which is what most people connect to get their logs and all the other stuff. 8080 is channel agnostic and lets you run quite a few different commands. Log rendezvous is the main one right now. If you don't have it on, you'll find that the rendezvous tab or section in the debugger will always be blank. So that's the easiest way to know that you don't have it enabled on your device, because we haven't detected a single one. And I don't know of anybody who's been able to create a channel without a rendezvous in today's day and age. You're going to have a couple. It's just a matter of being smart with where they occur. Does that answer your question, George?
Yeah, and I was wondering as well, are you guys mentioning much about the new debugger protocol today, or talking about the features there, or?
We'll probably, if we
scope?
have time at the end, that's probably a thing we're going to cycle around to.
Chris, you only took like 10 minutes. Why don't you just go ahead and talk a couple minutes about? I thought he was going to take like 45 minutes, so I pushed a whole bunch of that stuff on the bottom, but he blew through it all in like 7 minutes. So yeah, go ahead and talk about that a little bit now.
Yeah.
Can I ask like a really newbie question?
Yeah, sure.
So I have the plugin and I see breakpoints, but I don't see rendezvous.
Mm-hmm.
Did you explain how I get that to show up there?
Rendezvous will only show up when a debug session is running. Yeah.
Got it.
So you actually have to sideload it, and then once it's sideloaded, it should just pop up at the very bottom.
And you have to make sure that your device has log rendezvous enabled as well.
Yeah.
I think the tab will probably show up even if you don't have it enabled. You just won't see any data.
It'll either be empty if the device just restarted, or it will show you rendezvous from the last session that you were in.
Actually, what I can do too, I forgot to touch on this point with rendezvous since I'm still screen sharing. This isn't just a list of the file and the line. You can click on any of these. It'll jump you right to the file and the line that the rendezvous is happening. Now, the extension is not smart enough to know what caused the rendezvous, just that it happened on this line. But we also do average totals and things like that. You can also sort it either alphabetically or based on total duration of the rendezvous, things like that. You can also clear the rendezvous as well.
This is really beneficial. We had a project where we had a custom RAF adapter created for a project, and we didn't write that adapter. So we were seeing a lot of rendezvous, and it was very easy to just see the file. It was like, oh, that came from the adapter. This is the specific line, you know, and it's really easy to see. So this has been my best friend.
We have also used this a lot to push back to clients and that are writing SDKs and libraries because of performance. A big thing about rendezvous is the scaling across Roku devices. So more powerful devices, you might only lock up for a few seconds, but if you go to one of the older devices, you'll notice quite a difference in performance.
Yeah.
Hey Chris, do you know if you run the rendezvous locations through my new location functions? I just thought about that as I was going through and doing all the source map work this week. Do you know how we actually translate those locations back? Are you using like the breakpoint location?
We'll have to take a look. I don't think so. Now, I don't think that's been much of an issue in the past because, and actually this is a good segue into the new debugger, is that in the past it was nearly impossible. And to preface this, even today, breakpointing in a task is finicky. It's more of a Roku issue than an extension issue. It likes to switch contexts and stuff like that, basically change whatever thread it thinks it's actually stopped on. The new debugger that we're working on with Roku actually allows you to inspect any thread at any point once you've entered a breakpoint. So you can even swap between the render thread and the task thread and inspect across those, and make stepping through tasks and stuff far more consistent than what you might be experiencing today. The only requirement to use that is there is a user setting to turn it on. I think it's debug enable BrightScript protocol or debug protocol, I think it is, in your VS Code user settings. And your device has to be running 9.3. We don't support the debugger protocol that they've created prior to the 9.3 firmware release. But people can start playing with that today if they're interested.
And so just to touch a little bit on how that works, that's actually over a socket. So what we do with the current debugger is we just hook into Telnet and do a ton of regular expression matching and string parsing to convert the Telnet stuff into usable data. But the new debug protocol is actually sending back binary data. We had to do all that in JavaScript, and by we I mean it was all Chris. So it's a lot more efficient just in transferring data across the wire, as well as not running regular expressions on all the output to figure out what goes where. We get exact packets, structs of exactly what we're trying to get back. Like a variable, it's going to say, hey, I have 4 members. Here are their properties, and here's where they all start and stop. So it's going to be really awesome. What it's missing right now, that's kind of the big one holding us back, is eval support. So you can use it. You just can't do any custom evaluations like in the debug console. And like Chris showed earlier when we were debugging, you can't do any like Boolean conditionals, anything like that. You just have to do straight variables. Are you rerunning it with the new protocol now, Chris?
Yeah. I don't know why we're getting squigglies.
The compiler?
Oh yeah, it's compile error. Oh, because I tried to put it right in the middle of an object because I'm an idiot. Don't do that.
Chris, I saw you just toggle that checkbox. I'm curious if you could build something that would inject that log rendezvous on setting for it. Because I'm lazy and I don't want to do it myself.
Yeah. So I can actually talk to that briefly as well. It's still work in progress, to be clear. So, but we have a couple of Roku engineers that me and Bronley have access to, that we're taking what we see in the community, what people are expressing as their pain points and things like that, and also trying to know what people use the most, and we're taking that to them. We've actually had quite a few conversations with them, and even been able to, and without getting into too much detail, help guide their priorities onto what to add next. I can't really talk to what's being added next, but this is something we've brought up, so we'll see where the future goes. We might be able to do something with this at a protocol level, but nothing's confirmed as of yet.
But in the meantime, yeah, we absolutely could probably add a button over in the rendezvous panel in some fashion in the drop down to turn it on, turn it off. We may not, I'm not sure if we get the state, I don't know if we can find out if it's enabled or not, but we could always fire. Oh, we can? Yeah. So I don't know that would be overly difficult to do. And I agree with you. It's something we should definitely add.
Just, you know, there was talks a few months ago about actually adding a whole suite of command palette options for the 8080 stuff. We just never got around to it with the other things in the extension that were changing at the time. But so right now I've got this actually running on the new protocol. One thing that's really nice about the new protocol, assuming nothing is broken since I ran it last, is we get a lot more accurate information out of it. So I actually get the explicit types of everything. We don't have to try and infer this anymore. They actually tell us very well, like, if this exists, it's a RO invalid. I can quite easily and very, very quickly start stepping through stuff. It's much faster than what we had in the past. It's not perfect yet. We've only got one major iteration of this in, so we are definitely looking for feedback on this if people find issues with it. But variable inspection, stuff like that is a lot faster than it used to be.
Yeah.
Since you have that up and running, can you show the call stack where you can swap?
Oh yes, yeah. So this is the
Very
one
nice.
the bigger things that's changed is, so I'm in this thread, which is our task thread, but I can easily go back over here and start inspecting in the actual main thread right now that's paused, and just, yeah, I can easily just hop around threads. This is not even, well, it was possible with the old version, but would have required us to do so much work to the extension that we just never pursued it. But it's coming, and it's in there now if you want to start playing with it.
And this doesn't crash anymore, right? We're saying that, you know, you can hit breakpoints and resume in multi-threaded applications.
Yep.
That's amazing. That's going to be such a big thing.
I can run this again on a wrong remote because I have like 15. Break
well,
again.
Kudos to you guys, and kudos to Roku, because, you know, as the guys are saying, Roku have been very communicative and really helpful with the guys. I'm sure like Bronley's going to elaborate on that, but I've not seen a vendor be so helpful in my career. You know, usually the vendors, if anything, kind of get in the way, but it seems like they've been meeting with you guys fairly regularly as well, no? And helping drive the feature. So, you know,
yeah, so
for that.
Yeah, we've had a couple actual like virtual meetings with them. We have a direct communication channel to access them directly. So yeah, it's been a really good, and the engineers have been very open to our feedback, and we were actually able to surprise them with one thing that I know is a pain point in the community is, for example, the memory profiler. A lot of people avoid it. I was able to get that feedback to them. They actually thought that it was nailed down and super solid, and everybody loved it. But I know a lot of engineers are actually just confused by it. So we've been able to give them or inform them of some deficiencies, so that as a community and with them, create something better for everybody. Any other questions?
Chris, did you show evaluation stuff in the debug console?
I did not, but I can do that very briefly. So that'd be pretty similar to what is this?
Except you can do like assignments and stuff in that too, so it's a little different than the watch.
Yeah,
I believe you can.
Yeah,
actually, I don't know if you can. I'm thinking about that now.
Yeah, you can. I do it all the time. Okay. So if I'm in here, let's say I want to play with a date object. I can go date is equal to create object date time. That's not the right syntax because I'm a dirt. So I can do that. I can now print date. I can see it's our date time. I can do date, get year. I can run a bunch of stuff directly from here, just like you would do over Telnet previously. The main difference is that you have to be in the debug console for this. The output console is strictly visual. There's no way to actually input requests into this. But yeah, the example that I posted today in the bug report channel was me running it all through here.
Yeah. Yeah, the big reason we have the output channel is VS Code has a limitation right now. You can't do any kind of useful searching in the debug console. I don't think we can add any kind of colorization in there. So if the debug console gets as good as the output window, we could probably just get rid of that. But yeah. I don't see that happening anytime soon. There have been so many people asking VS Code to fix that, and they don't seem to care. So for now, all your logs, you probably want to play with it in the output window alongside of, I think, Chris, you're using that colorizer extension. What's that called?
Yeah, I'm using an extension called Output Colorizer by IBM.
Yeah, IBM.
And that's what actually gives you the very, very basic colorization of the output, but it's light years better than the old Telnet crap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just one other thing I thought I'd throw in, because a lot of people miss it, is the output and the debug consoles have the open the controller kind of built in, like basic.
Yes.
Say that, but you can, if you're in it, you can use your keyboard.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot
so
of
yeah,
people skip over that, but it's actually a really nice feature, especially if you're running multiple Rokus and you have multiple remotes.
Yeah. So essentially, what Nathan's getting at there is if you're focused in the output window, your left, rights, and things like that can actually send those keystrokes to the device. We are looking at improving that. I actually have an issue open on GitHub for this, mostly because it's finicky with focus a little bit. It's much better than nothing, but we're very open to hearing what people would like as far as improving this. We've been playing with ideas internally about whether we have a little web view, or if we can add a focusable panel in the debug area and get instead of in the output area, because there's many times some people have been using the remote and really they're just trying to type something and it kind of can get a little
Oh, Chris.
Yeah, there's one scenario that you can get in where it disconnects, but if you just reopen the debug menu on the side, I think it's like Control or Command Shift D, that will reconnect the remote as well. So
yeah,
people are running into that issue.
Chris,
We wanted it to be streamlined, and so it's really convenient. You're usually already in that output window, scrolling around. You want to poke around, so we're not looking to take that away, but nothing about that window says, "Hey, click here, move your arrows around, it'll move on the screen." I mean, it doesn't make any sense until you know it's there. So, anyway, we're open to feedback if there are ways to improve this.
I love the feature. I've got a couple of focus things that might help with that as well. I'll share some snippets.
Yeah,
there are some you can tweak the snippets in a way where it doesn't get so annoying. I think the most important thing is you need to make sure you're not using search. I'll share my key setup with it. I can't live with that. I've got, like the rest of you, so many Roku remotes. And the truth is I don't actually know where any of them are anymore because I just don't use them ever. Like I just use that key feature. So was it you who did that, Chris? Did you write that feature?
No, that was already in. The first thing that I added was the variable panel.
Okay. I'm wondering who did the key feature. Whoever did that, I love.
I remember somebody else submitted it, and I thought somebody about state. So I know it wasn't me, but I know I pushed for not having like a in keyboard mode, out of keyboard mode. But I can't remember.
Blake, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
But in any case, I just posted a link in the chat for the keyboard commands, so you can actually map these to keyboard shortcuts that you want. Let's say you want to do Control Alt and then just type the keyboard from anywhere. So we have commands for all of the remote sends, as well as popping up a text box that you can send actual typed keys.
Oh yeah. The other thing too is if you're wondering all the stuff that we can do, we have, if you just type Command Shift P, brings to the command palette, type bright, you'll see there's tons and tons of different things that different commands that you have access to. Most of them are keys, but there's a lot of other ones as well. Like this one's actually really nice. The toggling XML BRS. It'll just swap you back and forth between the two.
The logic being they have to be named the same in the same folder, and it'll just auto swap between the two different files. Yeah. Just kind of a convention thing.
Yeah. Does Chris have time to show a quick task launch JSON setup?
That's actually what Bronley's going to be doing, is going over that stuff. And I think it's probably a good time to move to that before we spend too much time here.
Perfect.
You're talking about configurations, like how you can configure different. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. That's on my plate.
Perfect.
Yep. And I'm always available, and Bronley, for the most part, is available quite a lot too, in our dedicated Roku chat, our VS Code chat in the Roku Slack. Feel free to pop in. Tell us about bugs. Please tell us about bugs, file issues. We're usually pretty quick to get to a lot of them.
Yeah. I have a day job that isn't Roku, so I'm just kind of in and out occasionally. But this is my hobby. I really enjoy doing this stuff, so I want it to be good. So let me know if there's stuff. Yeah, please just reach out to us. Let us know. We're not unavailable. We're here to work on this stuff. Can you guys see my screen? I'm just showing the Roku community.
Yep.
page right now.
Yep.
Okay. How is the quality as I poke around? I haven't been on the other end of me sharing. Is it mostly clear? Or do I need to get stuff a little bigger?
Maybe one notch, maybe.
All right, good. I'll do that for extension as well then. Okay. All right, so Chris showed just kind of a basic application, how you would launch it, and that kind of works out of the box for standard Roku projects where you have a folder with manifest and source. So where's his project here? It's this one. It's your standard project structure. I think I can make this window bigger. Anyway, but there are going to be a lot of situations, like almost every single person I talk to does not use just this exact structure. They've got nested folders and folders from that place and this place and that other place and merge them all together with magic and voodoo. So as we've been working on this, we've created a bunch of techniques to try to support all of those various project structures. So the first one I wanted to talk about was just kind of how you customize a subdirectory. So let's just say all of your source code, and I'm gonna go ahead and copy this. So this standard with task, that was Chris's original project. So I'm just gonna make a copy. I'm gonna call that customize launch config. And we'll go ahead and open VS Code in here. And I think I can make this one bigger. So that should do the job. All right, so let's say your project structure is actually like this. You've got your source inside of there, your components, and your manifest. So it looks more like this. Out of the box, we're not going to be able to launch this. We need you to tell us a little bit more about your project. And so that's where something like a launch config comes in handy. What you can do is, normally Chris would just press F5 to launch a debug session, and that's not going to work in this case because it won't find the file. So you can go to Run, Add Configuration, and then pick BrightScript Debug. And then that's going to open up kind of like the default debug configuration. So this is exactly what is used when you launch without a launch config. And so it just pre-populates with all of the defaults. And then what you can do, and so in this situation, all we've done is we've moved our source code into that SRC folder. So the root dir is the one that you're going to be interested in here. So you can change that from workspace folder /SRC. At that point, everything else will work magically. It's going to take all these files, it's going to package them up and zip them up and send them up to the Roku. I haven't tested this in a while. We'll see if this actually runs. Like Chris's password better, shorter. There you go. So another common thing that people would like to do is sometimes they have additional files that they want to include. So by default, let me close this. By default, these are the files that we look for. And I'm not sure, some of you may be familiar with like JavaScript land with the glob syntax, but that's what, I come from a web development profession. And so I'm really familiar with using tools like Gulp and Grunt, Webpack, things like that. And so glob is pretty popular in that world. So that's kind of what I brought to this. But by default, what the extension looks for is the manifest file, everything. So the ** means every folder recursively. So it looks for everything under the source folder recursively, everything under the components folder and the images folder. But sometimes you're going to potentially have additional folders. So let's make like a new folder in here. We'll call it configs source. And you got another file in there for something like that. So when you launch this, it is not going to copy the configs by default because that's not what's in the list. So go ahead and I need to, actually before I do that, I want to set up my host because I'm tired of typing it. Another thing you can do is you can add the host right in here. Oh boy. And you can set your password as well. And Now when we launch, we'll automatically use those. So just to give you an idea of what's actually happening here, there's this new out folder. And what it does is it puts all of the files into a Roku deploy staging folder. And so this is where it loads everything and then rewrites all of your files with breakpoints. So here's the zip. So I actually wanted to unpack that zip and just going to show you. And so you notice the configs folder is not there. So we need to add that. All right, so we can rerun that. And this time around, it should add that configs folder in there as well. And there we go. So now it got copied into the Roku deploy staging folder. So that's going to be a common thing you do as you start to get into more of these folders. We only intend on adding by default the folders that Roku expects. So anything additional, you're going to have to add yourself. But if there's like a folder, like I think the internationalization folder might be missing from this default list. But if there are other folders that like Roku expects to be in specific places, please let us know and we can add those to the default list so you don't end up having to customize this over and over again. All right, so another thing you can do is we've got additional placeholders or like magic things. So workspace folder is a common one that that VS Code supports. But we also have what are the other ones? I have that link. Let me go ahead and pull this up. We have a few other. So one of the things that you can add is an environment file. And so this is a common thing to do if you're constantly working on different Rokus, which all are. And you don't want to muddy up your accidentally commit like a username or a password into your Git repository. You can create an environment file. And so I'm not going to demo this, but I'll show you how to configure it. What you'll do is you'll set the end file to a path to the end file. So you can put this in like user/your name. Like you can put this wherever you want. It'll find it as long as you have a valid path there. And then what that allows you to do is it allows you to configure like a username or a password, and you reference them just like this. And we have information out on the README for the extension for that. But so I want to make you aware that exists so that you're not constantly having to edit your launch configs just to put 6-7 different passwords in there as you're changing stuff. You just want to muddy your Git repository. So, and before I go any further, any questions about the launch config?
No, but I just said that's super handy because I have like a million launch configs, like test, integration test, this particular, and then I can use the same end file across all of them. So as I'm testing out different devices, I just edit my end file and bam, all of my 6 launch configs are all updated. So that's a great feature. Thank you.
Yeah, you can have multiple launch configs. This is an array, so you can obviously create different environments, different targets, different files. I think George has a project that I've been fiddling with that you actually have one for testing that excludes the test that includes the test files, and another one that excludes them. So you could do something like that. Which would throw out.
That's a really good thing to note too. Is like if we use this on our project, we have some test files in kind of with our other files, but we don't want to include them. So we actually have our files glob set up to exclude anything with the word test in it anywhere in the path, right? So then we just don't have to worry about that getting included accidentally. And we do have a separate launch config that does the opposite. It includes all of those so that we can start running our unit tests and stuff like that. Very useful.
Yeah. And then like you say, you don't have to go through anymore and edit the host on 4 or 5 different launch configs. Just change it once in your M file and you're good to go.
Yeah.
One thing to note is that we're still working through this. Bronley and I are trying to figure out at some point a way to make the environment file a little bit more friendly. Right now, you can only use it in parameters that are strings to begin with. So there are some things in the environment file that are Boolean based, like stop on entry and stuff like that. We don't currently support those in the environment file yet, but we're kind of playing with ideas on how we can do that. You're muted, Brunley.
My kid was banging on the door trying to get in. He's not happy that I'm not here to hug him good night, but I'll get him in the morning. He'll be good. Yeah, so BS Const is another one as well. So yeah, we have talks to enhance that a little bit. So is that something you're interested in, please let us know. We're looking for feedback for things that are priority as well. If there are things that are a pain point for you, like we want to know that this will be helpful to get out sooner rather than later. So as we go through these things, please reach out.
Hey, Bron, have you actually forgotten these things, or are you just trying to hit home the importance for people to go and visit the documentation?
Oh, no, I don't remember any of this crap. I have to go to the documentation for everything. My brain works in such a way that I know it exists and I know where it exists, but I can't tell you anything about it until I go look at it. It's frustrating.
Yeah, but the same here too.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, everyone. There's great documentation. Make sure you go to the site and find out all of the features you can use.
Yeah, and we're looking for people to help with the documentation too. If anybody wants to tidy it up a little bit, we'd love that. All right, so moving on then. The next thing I wanted to touch on is, actually, before we move on, I wanted to explain a little bit about where this files array comes from. So there is a tool that I created back kind of when I started all this called Roku Deploy. And that is in our Roku community repo. So you can use this tool. It's a command line tool, a node tool specifically. And that's where that files array eventually gets sent into. So when you package up your project, we're actually using Roku Deploy under the hood to package this up. So if you've got your own custom build scripts, and mostly what you're doing is taking these files and these files and these files and copying them over there, you should seriously look into using Roku Deploy for that. So it can bundle your project. You can just copy it to staging if you wanted to and stop there. But it can bundle it. It can deploy it to a Roku, as well as also sign the package as well. So if you have CI, you can use this for the entire flow, assuming you don't have a lot of like custom build things that you need to do. But you could also do those first and then use Roku Deploy for the rest of the process. Yeah. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is code formatting. And so this was actually the first thing that I wrote. So tiny little story. I was working on like a little personal media project, and I wanted to write a Roku app for it, and that's how I got into this. And I got annoyed that I had to manually format my code all the time. So that was the first thing I wrote, was a code formatter. So this is kind of like my little baby code formatter. It's pretty dumb. It just looks for like keywords and then indents. So we're constantly finding edge cases where it screws everything up. But I'm not sure if you're aware of this. It's pretty good. So I'm going to just go ahead and smash everything in this file. And when you automatically format, so my keyboard shortcut is Alt-Shift-F, but it's format documents is the command. That's the VS Code format. It'll do all sorts of stuff. Indent is one of my favorites, but another thing you can configure in your user settings, I think it's this one. Oh, this one. In your user settings, you can set various formatting options. There's a whole bunch of options here. So composite keywords, those are like the end if, the end while, the end function. You can set it to always combine them, or leave them alone, or always split them. And so let's go ahead and do a combine, and then reformat this. And you'll notice this guy's going to get combined as we do this. And boom, there you go. There's a bunch of other options here. I won't go into too much, but you got single line comments to all be rem or all be single quote, which I had it there, but I hope y'all just like to use single quotes because one of them is nasty looking. In space, yeah. So you can go out and read the README. But the one other thing I wanted to specify, go over a little bit, is keyword case. And so by default, you can force all of them, all your keywords, to be title case. All of your, like, if you look what I'm doing there, all of these keywords, like the if, the and, all that stuff, they're getting uppercase. You can do you can do lowercase, which is how I'm using all the wrong keywords. The other thing you can do is you can have this be the default, and then have a couple of them. A couple of them be overridden. Keyword case override is an array, is an object. So let's say I want the end function to be all uppercase, but I don't want anything else to be all uppercase. Oh man, it's not gonna work on me. Come on.
I don't have any functions in that file. They're all subs.
Oh, is that what it is? There we go. So we have the granularity to, if you, this was actually requested, which is why it exists there. There are some people that have very strict formatting policies on just certain keywords. So that is available for your keywords as well as your types. Like if you got like a name as string here, for example, then you could do it as function. That would be, this here is a type as sub. I don't know if you can do that, but they would be treated, this would be treated as a type, and this would be treated as a keyword. So you have the granularity to get down there and change exactly what you need. If there are rules that you'd like to see added, please let me know. I've kind of done the best I can with guessing what people want, but the formatter is supposed to be there to be as flexible as possible. So please reach out if there's more that you're looking for.
Can I just add something to that
Yeah.
say that I love your formatter because I use type WebStorm as well as VS Code. And when you get when you run the formatter and you've got an error, it just mullers your code. It just turns it into absolute spaghetti and you can't even get it back. Whereas one thing I love about your formatter is that it doesn't mess up all the code. It's completely safe to use. And oftentimes I use it as a way of finding if I've missed an end diff or an end for or something. If I'm just tired and I just can't be bothered to read my code, I just press the formatter. If my subs and functions aren't back in the same place, I'm like, great, I've got something. And therefore I know whereabouts in my code it's gone wrong as well. So I find it endlessly helpful. I'm constantly hitting Alt F for me.
I've got a better way for you to find errors in your code, George.
Well,
segue.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, let's go ahead and close this out. So the next thing I wanted to show you guys is this is something I've been working on for almost a year. And for those of you that have been in the beta program, you've had it since almost the beginning. But I have started to add in language support, specifically parsing and validating your code. So thanks in large part to Sean Barag, whatever, Sean, the guy from Hulu, he wrote a parser called BRS that actually provides an abstract syntax tree for BrightScript. So I worked with him, got a bunch of bugs fixed, and then created a language server for the extension. And so what this gets you is you can actually get syntax errors highlighted directly in your project. So I'm going to open up Chris's project here again. And that's the benefit of this BS config right here, is you can configure it. And by default, you don't even have to create a BS config. The only time you need to make it is if you need to tell it, like I showed earlier, like a subdirectory, that's where your files live. But if you look here, and the parser's not perfect yet. There are definitely a couple edge cases, but we have an error that shows up that says, hey, there's something strange with your code. Let's go ahead and add some weird invalid syntax. I don't know what this is. We have, get an error right there that says, I was looking for more arguments than you provided. So I'm missing an open paren. And you get something. Now, some of them are a little runaway, and as we work on this, we're going to tighten them in, but you get something that says the syntax is wrong. I got it. Yeah. So I can't speak to it a ton. I don't use it every day, but it seems like it's been mostly well received, and it's on by default in all users of the extension now. Ever since we released version 2 of the extension February-ish, it's been on by default, and I haven't heard a lot of pushback. Yeah, so that's there. And what's neat is, in addition to this just being available in the extension, you can also run this language service. They actually validate your code from the command line. So the language is called BrighterScript, and we actually did something similar to JavaScript, where Microsoft made TypeScript to have additional features on top of JavaScript. We did something similar. We got BrightScript and then BrighterScript. And so that's what this tool is, but it works. You don't have to write a single line of BrighterScript. It will work against all BrightScript projects as well. And so you can actually run this from the command prompt, and it will go through and validate your project. So you can use this in your continuous integration solutions as well to get some syntax checking before your pull requests get approved, for example.
And we'll just point out, if it was installed, it wouldn't take this long to run, right?
Right, yeah, I'm running this right from NPM, so that's a good point, George.
Yeah.
I forgot to install it locally. And so there were no errors, but let's go ahead and take out, let's just do like a funny one. So a function that doesn't exist, I don't know what this is. That one now, as I run this, I probably should have just installed it. Demos. Wasn't planning on demoing this one, so. Yeah, if it's installed, it would take about 2 seconds. And so there you go. You actually get, this will return a non-zero error code from the command line. So it will actually fail your CI builds. You get inline diagnostics that you can actually see exactly where the errors are, as well as if you run this in VS Code, these links are clickable. But you also get them in your problems window if you're running it directly you get them automatically just for using the extension. So yeah, use those. Let us know if you find any issues with syntax. We have most of the syntax nailed down, so now it's just a matter of enhancing things like optional parameters and better understanding of how imported scripts work. But yeah, that's good.
And it's worth noting, it's we haven't shown it much here because these samples are really, really simple. But if you have something where let's say you use relative pathing religiously throughout your code, right? And you maybe copy a component to start another component as just a little template to start from. If you forgot to rename that file in your XML, we will typically, but you did rename the actual real file, it knows that that file doesn't exist and will try and throw errors right in your XML for either imports that it can't find, or it'll even do one that's really good is when it's used multiple, it's an unnecessary import. So let's say you've got a base screen that imports your common utilities, but you don't want to have to import that in everywhere you extend base. It knows that, so it'll also tell you, hey, you don't need to import this again. You already have it. There's a lot of stuff like that too.
It even catches things like the file case doesn't match. For case-sensitive file systems, this actually matters a little bit more when you're using the editor. So that's why this shows up as a warning there. So another thing you can do is, if there are going to probably be problems with the parser, with the language syntax stuff. So we have also added diagnostic filters. So every one of these errors is a diagnostic. And you see the diagnostic code here. This is diagnostic number 1012. Let's say you don't care about ever being notified of file cases being different. Because, you know, its main scene is actually an uppercase, so that it will go away. But you don't want to change that. You like the way that they're written for some reason. You can ignore these errors by just adding that diagnostic code to the diagnostic filters array. And then that diagnostic code goes away. So I don't recommend hiding compile errors, because unless it's a false negative, they're actual errors. But for some of the hints, I try not to make it too linty. I don't want it to just be bothering you about coding my way. But I'm trying to find that balance. But if we've gone too far and this error, this warning is just really annoying, you can ignore them here. As well as, where's the other syntax? I had it, I can't remember now. Yes, you can also filter codes based on blobs. And so then you only want to hide that error code for the components folder, but you don't want to hide it for the source folder. All right, looking back through my notes here. We haven't really gone over this, but we have go-to definition and find usages and references. So you can right-click on this and choose find references, and it will go through your project and it will find every single place that function is called. Not sure why it's not highlighting them right now, but it's taking me to the right spot. I don't think we have, yeah, so you can also press F12, which is the, I think it's go to definition. Yeah, that command. So you can press F12. Oh, I lost it again. Sorry, I'm bouncing all over the place. Need to stop using the keyboard shortcuts. You can press F12 right here, and it will take you to the definition of that function.
I don't know if people know this, but you can also press Control up and down if you've got it set up to go between functions in a file. I find that useful sometimes. I don't know if you've got it set up. You've got go to next and go to previous member.
I don't know about that one. I believe you. I'm not familiar with what that one does. What was the command, George?
Oh, so what? I think it might be another plugin that I use.
Okay, sure.
I'll share it.
Talk to George.
I thought it was part of your extension. It's not, but I use that just as much as I use these ones as well.
There's also symbol navigation. So you can press on my computer, it's Control T, and you can type the name of a symbol.
At will show you both functions and m dot variables.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a global version of that, which I only started using about 6 weeks ago. I don't know how I missed it before, but my God, it's been game changing for me. There's a keyboard shortcut. I have Apple Shift G, and I could just go to any function, any file. That's the one there. That'll go to any, that's the local one. The @ and hash is any file in your project, and that is so handy. Yeah. Especially if you've got, if you use template patterns like I do. So you've got a lot of files that have on show, on hide, or on feed loaded or whatever. You can see all the files that implement a particular interface method in one go. Super handy.
We also provide, if you notice as I'm typing, it is filtering the list of options available to you there. We've got IntelliSense. I've tried to leave it as flexible as possible because the language server is still so new. I think we do a pretty good job, but if there are things that are missing that you think should show up in that list, please file an issue. One of the things we do is the moment I detect that you're next to an object, where we have a dot, I just go through and I pull every single word through the entire scope. So this file, in addition to its parent files inside of the XML, so that you're not getting every word in just this document, you're getting every word that could be a variable from anything in this scope, which is, because, you know, a lot of the time these text replacements like this, like Notepad++ and VS Code, when you're just in text document mode, it just only finds the words in this same file. So I try to make it a little smarter. Eventually we will have object tracking and type tracking. So if I know that you get a variable from, you know, person equals get person somehow, I should be able to know you know, that it has a first name property. We're going to get to that point. But in the meantime, you should at least get every text item that's available in scope. You also have all the functions that are available, and you get the signature hints there. In the last 2 weeks, I added comment tracking into the parser. So it should be much easier now to augment this with our JS doc, BRS doc stuff. So that's something on the roadmap. I want to be able to give you the description of create row items and the information about the JSON property and the list content property. We'll get to that point, but we had to add comment support. So that was something that took me a while to get through because we were discarding them in the parser previously. Yeah.
It's also worth noting that the auto completion for the entire component scope doesn't just apply when you're at the dot. It applies for functions as well. So on one of the projects I work on, we have a common utility file that's about 4,000 lines long of just tons and tons of like 10-line long functions that do it, just the most common things that we think should be native to the language. But we get IntelliSense for that function, even though it's not right here. And that works across extends as well. Again, back to the example of I have home screen that extended base screen that imported this giant utility file. I will get the autocomplete for all the functions in that file as well.
Yeah. I had to basically build in the entire nesting of components and inheritance to make sure that every scope is aware of all of the functions. So if you call a function that doesn't exist in this scope, you'll know about it, and you'll also get IntelliSense for everything that does exist. We got completions. I wanted to show you guys a little bit about like a custom build. So a common build, a common project structure that I've seen is you'll have like your app and then like a base project that you use for maybe multiple apps. And so your build system generally goes through and it copies all of the files from base into your app that have not been overridden by app. So I wanted to show you briefly how to configure that. I think this is the one. I might have picked the wrong one. Nope, it's right there. So out of the box, Roku Deploy already supports that. So if your entire workflow was just copy stuff from up there into my app and then copy all my app files in second to make sure that the app ones win, that's already supported here. And so that this files array right here is how you would set it up. And I think I have these backwards. The base needs to be first. So you would copy every file from base, and then you would overwrite everything from your main project. And since the root dir is set to main project, all of these paths are relative to the main project. And so I have two launches here that I wanted to show you. But in my project, it's really simple. I call a get config function, and then I print it. And so in my app, my config project name is set to main project. In my base, the project name is set to not the main project. And so I have two launch configurations set up. If I can find them. So this one is just the app. And then this one is the base project smushed on top of app. So let's go ahead and we'll debug that first one. And I'm going to put breakpoints in here. Let's go ahead and do the main by itself. And my source map broke. Come on, buddy. Okay, where you at? That's fun. Try again. I didn't test this one out. There we go. Sweet. So when I step into get config, what it loaded was the config from main project. You see that right here. Then if I stop and I pick the main project with base, I run it again. When I step in, oh, come on. I did it backwards. They were supposed to be the other way around. One more time again. There we go. So now it opened the base project instead. So it's really powerful what you can do with those files arrays. And the other example that I don't have a working example for is if you have a custom build process that you don't want to use Roku deploy for, we actually support that as well. So what you would do is you can specify source DIRs. And what this is so your project will have, let's say, you've got 3 different folders. It doesn't really matter. You've got your own build system in some fashion. And you dump all of that to, let's say, like a dist folder. That's a common one. What you can do is source 1 and source 2, for example. So what will happen is, as long as your build system doesn't change line numbers, we will package up the dist folder, we'll run it on the Roku, and every time we get a breakpoint, we will walk through source 1 to see if there's a file with the same name that we found in the debugger. If there isn't, we'll walk up the chain, source 2, source 3, source 4. So it gives you flexibility in having your own build system, as long as you're not changing line numbers, because past that, we really can't do much. And a lot of these things are kind of in, they're edge cases. They're hard to go into too much detail here, but I want to make you aware that they exist. So, and then one final thing I just want to mention is, if you're familiar with JavaScript land, we have something called source maps. And in, so what that allows you to do is, you have a source file, let's say something written in TypeScript, and you transpile that into plain JavaScript, you minify it, you uglify it. So your line numbers and column numbers are all over the place. Tools like Chrome and Node, when you're debugging, will support source maps, where it takes the compiled location and maps it back to the original location. I got a bunch of bugs worked out, and as of 2 days ago, the extension supports source maps. So if you generate source maps with your project, you can actually debug the original source code with whatever transformations you have done in your build process. And I want to show you that. I have a little project that does that. So it's a pretty simple app. I've got print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and notice there's an extra space in between each of them. My custom build just loops through and rips out all of the new lines so that the final output has no new lines. So as of right now, this custom build with just using source DIRs would not work. You would get line numbers all over the place. But if you notice, my build created a source map file. And I have an example of here of how to do it. They're not the easiest things in the world to write, but once you get your head around them, they're all right. Especially if you use something like Gulp. They have a ton of source map support for regular expression replacing and things like that. But so what this will do is, when I launch, I have a pre-launch task set to build. So it's going to run my build npm task, which just runs that build script to remove the line. So I'm going to go ahead and launch, and I'm going to put a couple of breakpoints here. So if you look in my output, the actual line that I broke on is package source main BrightScript BRS line 3. So this line 3 in the output file is actually right here. But it broke on line 4 in my source code because it used the source map to map that back. So step over, step over. So now you look, this is actually line, where'd the last, I think we lost the output. I didn't have it set to show all, but it's actually stepping through and remapping all of those locations to their correct location because they have source maps. So, all right, well, that's about all I had in terms of, I just wanted to make you aware they all exist. And yeah, if you have any questions.
There's one last thing that I'd like to touch on. We don't have a demo of it right now, but I can get something up. We have on the Roku community, we have a sample projects repo, which is where all these examples live. We also, in the extension, natively support component libraries. If any of you are working on those, it's pretty much as simple as just defining a separate little files array for a component library. There's examples in the README, and like I said, I'll get an example made in the next day or so and get it up on this repo. But the extension will do the zipping and packaging of both your base code and your component library. You can do stepping and inspection just like you normally do. It'll spin up a little static file host to actually download the file, just like you normally would if you had hosted it on a CDN. So all that you really have to do in your app is come up with a way to inject your computer's IP and whatever port. I think do we use 8080 as default?
Yeah,
I can't remember.
obviously.
But
Port does 8080,
yeah.
but you can customize it.
Yeah.
So here's an
But,
example project I have that does that. I don't have it
yeah.
public, but
yeah. So that's very powerful for anybody who's doing component libraries. I've done a lot of work with them. I would, if anybody finds issues with them, please let us know. I think long term, they're probably going to be seeing a lot more use. We're starting to see Willow Tree putting out reusable code for other developers and stuff. So, but yeah, I just want to make people aware that exists and actually has existed for the better part of a year as well.
yeah, and that also supports source maps as well as source DIRs. So everything you could do debugging wise in the main channel, you can do that for component libraries. You can step through them, set breakpoints, and it all works. Any questions? But I'm out of sleep with my boring config demo.
I think there's a lot more features yet as well. So I think what we could perhaps do is revisit some of them, like maybe have a 5-minute session in the next meetup or someone when we get together to talk about people's favorite features in the IDE. Because I'm certain if we start busting that out, we're going to be here for another hour.
Oh yeah.
Because there's a lot more to it. I think in that case, there's probably, it's getting on towards the end of the evening for some people. So maybe it's best we think about wrapping the presentation there. You guys cool with that?
Yep.
In that case, thank you both of you. Hey, Bron, could you do me a favor? Could you just share a link for your GitHub support page?
Yeah, sure.
I'm sure everyone on the channel already knows about this, but just in case you don't, as we know, Bronley doesn't actually do any Roku dev. So Chris and myself, we're active, and a lot of the other guys who are on this call who are active in the open source community, we get the benefits of our work. Bronley gets the benefits of seeing us guys happy and solving problems that pleases him. But he also has a way that, we can add our contribution and appreciation for him and his lovely wife and his little one that makes sacrifices for his time. So the good thing is if we record this, people in the future are going to see it as well. So if you're watching now or in the future on the recording, please consider going to the website address up there and sponsoring Bron, because it's all good and we'll benefit from it. In that case, do we have any other questions in terms of the VS Code IDE? I thought, looks like we're happy there.
Thank you guys for all your work and for the presentation. It was awesome.
No problem.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, well, in that case, before we draw things to a close, I just want to quickly get a read on people and what kind of things I'd like to see in future meetups, because I think the fact everyone showed up probably means we should keep doing it. I don't know about you guys. I think the Roku community is a very niche and unique community. I'm very new to it. I've only been around for a couple of years. And I love how much people have come together on the Slack group we have here. I don't lie at all when I say the Slack group is one of the best things I've ever done in my career. I'm really glad I started it, and I love interacting with all you guys every day. And I love a lot of the open source endeavors that have come together as a result of it. So I think it only makes sense that we get together and talk sometimes. So it'd be nice to get some ideas of what kinds of things we might like to talk about in future. So I'm going to post up some ideas in the channel. There's a few things that I'd be happy to talk about, such as Slack is down now.
Oh, is it?
Okay, I'll keep on trucking on Google then. So I want to talk about unit testing some. If anyone's interested in some demos on how I use testing, because as you know, I wrote the Roy Bush unit testing framework, so obviously I'm really into testing. So I could perhaps do a session on that if anyone's interested. I'm also in the process of writing a super fast list that just absolutely trounces the default performance for Roku's row lists. I'm interested in getting open source contributors to help with that. So maybe next time we meet up, I can share what I've been doing there and show it to people. And then I guess we could talk about architecture. There's a bunch of you guys that have expert knowledge on component libraries. So the point being, I think what might be nice to do for while we're still on the call is think about how we can maybe chuck some ideas out there for the next few meetups and see if anyone's interested in presenting. So I think I'll just say, we don't have to talk about it right now, but when Slack is back up, let's put some ideas down and think about the next one.
It seems to be working.
No, Slack's down, man.
Works for me.
Bronley and I just sent messages.
Oh, it looks like it's back up now.
Yeah.
It was hard down, trust me. It was hard down.
George, where are you seeing as the cadence for meetings? Are you seeing once a month, or what are we looking at for trying to shoot for?
What you guys want to do, really. I'm happy to meet up whenever. So it's
sure.
I'm happy for someone to take these over. I don't have a vested interest in running these. It's just, it's like sometimes you just have to get something started and then people do it. Yeah. So that's saying, thank you for reminding me. If anyone wants to run these meetups, please help yourselves, because I even put the time up wrong. I'm absolutely bloody useless. So someone's going to do a way better job than me. But I don't know if someone wants to either take it over and run with it, or how often we should meet. I'd be happy. I think honestly, there's enough people out there to talk about things every 2 weeks personally, but I guess it's what the appetite is and what people want. I'd happily get together one evening every 2 weeks and learn about what my excellent friends and colleagues in the Roku community are doing.
I just recommend that you have an actual cadence of some fashion, whatever it is, because if it's just randomly, people are not going to put it together, not going to think about it, not going to remember that it's every first Tuesday of the month or whatever it is. Just find something consistent.
Well, first point being, is anyone on the call who wants to run the meetups?
I'm willing to chat or to do some. Just recently at my company, we've been doing kind of tips and tricks, similar stuff, where we target certain areas. So, if we, get kind of a schedule, and we're happy to be kind of just presenter or run a meeting on certain topics. I tend to focus on performance and copying data, rendezvous, just optimization, but that might be kind of a good idea, is to split it into some categories where people can highlight, and we have different kind of presenters and different kind of ideas on a schedule. I think would be good.
I kind of like the idea of so we're the second Tuesday of the month right now is what we've happened to fall on. I kind of like the idea of tying it to a particular interval into the month rather than every 4 weeks. I find that because that kind of drifts around within a month as time progresses. If we want to do maybe the second Tuesday each month, I think that might be an interesting way to do it. I don't know that we want to do much more than once a month to start with. And I think we really we'll have to play the cadence by ear a little bit.
Do we have any numerologists on the call? Make sure we get the correct.
We just need somebody to fact check your
a multiple of 13 participants.
Sorry, no, I'm not letting anyone else in. It's bad luck on this particular month. I think every month then, and then we can fit the date. Second Tuesday, you guys are completely right. Having a date that you can point to, an easy to remember day, that makes sense. I like the idea of having like you say, Nathan, like 2 or 3 things. So maybe what we could do is try and get 3 topics for the next one and see if we can have 3 like 20-minute sessions.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about it with, obviously there's so much stuff with the extension, and there's also stuff constantly being added. So really, I could see that being like always, almost like a always thing of like, here's the little tip this month of like what's new or like what's cool or something like that, a highlight type of thing.
Yeah.
It would be a really good opportunity actually for us to for Bronley and I and whoever else is working on the extension to go, hey, these are the things we're looking to do as a community. What do you guys want first, right? Because as it stands right now, it's really 2.5 active people that dedicate a large amount of time. We definitely get pull requests here and there, but the majority of the work comes from just 2 of us right now, and of that, double that comes from Bronley himself, right? So bandwidth is tight for us, but it improves, at least in my life, being an actual Roku engineer. But I like to see it improve other people's as well. So it's a really good opportunity to actually gauge, is it worth investing our limited bandwidth into X feature right now when we could benefit the community better with something else?
Yeah, especially for me personally, because I don't do any Roku development. So like, I'm like, oh, this is cool. And like, none of you are like, yeah, we don't care about that. So like, it'd be helpful to know, No, that's not a priority.
Write your damn media server.
I think I'm just going to have one of you do that for me for free because you love me. Not just be making your editor better.
That should be a tier on your donations page. Like, write me a Roku media server.
Yeah, pay me $100 and write me an app. No, it's good though.
Well, in that case, sorry, go on.
On the question of kind of these talks and stuff like that, is it might be a kind of a good idea to where people to kind of gauge people kind of skill levels, because I don't want to. Some of these things might be just a little bit too much. Their discussions kind of, if we have kind of a little bit of a newer crowd or people that have just like learning pain points rather than, dive too deep into some Roku discussions, that might be kind of an idea to kind of gauge, what people are having issues with. Maybe just a little bit of a questionnaire, so these types of meetings can kind of be, target the best topics for everybody. So, kind of like this is a great introduction to, if somebody hasn't used the VS Code or is missing some of that stuff, it might be kind of a good idea to get some of those more introductory and more learning and tool stuff on the books before, we start hammering people with memory profiler stuff.
Yeah, that actually brings up a good topic that I potentially wouldn't mind touching on for the next one, is basically producing a interactive forum for basically setting up what the Roku Like a Hurricane has for HTTP proxying. So there's, as we all know, this is a huge pain point and it keeps showing up over and over again. But there's kind of one solution that I've come across that seems to get you pretty much 90% there. It's not going to get you like the stuff at a RAF and that type of stuff, but for everything your app is actually doing, all the way down to the player and stuff, this works for all that. And it's just a matter of setting up a little piece of code in your app and a couple of rewrites in Charles. So that's a topic that would probably be highly beneficial to the community now, because I know people are still almost every week. How do I mean, we've had 3 in the past 2 days. So, and I can try and get a little repo set up for that to demonstrate that rather than just a blog post.
Maybe we should set up a new GitHub repo called like Roku Community /Meetups or something. We can plan out like a roadmap and topics and let people maybe just use the GitHub issues to post ideas and stuff.
I like that. I like the GitHub issues.
It's so lost. Nobody sees anything. It just gets, it's just a waterfall. It's all over the bridge. I just mixed metaphors, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But all right, I gotta go, guys. I gotta roll.
All right.
See everybody, and reach out if you have questions. It's great. Thanks.
Nice one. Cheers, Bronley.